Okay. Brad, I'm going to kick it to you first, and then I'm going to go to Chris. But I'm just going to wait a little bit until there's more people, because inevitably what happens is people will start to go in. You're going to be in control of it, and then you're going to be distracted by people jumping on. So just stand by a little bit. Yeah, you're. I could see you now, Chris. You're doing pretty good moving around there. Welcome, everybody, to the Pennsylvania Fire and Emergency Services Institute webinar. Just waiting for everybody to get online here, and we'll kick off tonight's webinar. It's great to see some familiar names, and actually a bunch of new names from across Pennsylvania. Got some really important information to talk about tonight that has been used to improve, support, and enhance the volunteer fire service and EMS across Pennsylvania, which ultimately that's our mission, to support organizations, to advocate for you, and work at different levels of government to keep things moving ahead in Pennsylvania. If you do not know a lot about Pennsylvania Fire and Emergency Services Institute, certainly we'll be able to follow up. I have all your email addresses, and we'll follow up with potential questions that you may have. If you ever have a question in regards to legislation that is in the House or Senate, I'd be willing to more than happy to discuss anything with you, or get you the resources. I do encourage all of you to continue to monitor our social media pages as we try to put out legislative alerts on a regular basis. And I encourage all of you to be engaged at your local level with your member of the House, your senator, your county commissioners, and your township supervisors, your borough council, whoever that may be. Because in my experience, the most successful fire service organizations in Pennsylvania have been the ones that have had an excellent relationship with their government officials. And part of this, part of our program here is to discuss the tax breaks that have been implemented across Pennsylvania for volunteer emergency services. And what I'm going to do is we're going to kick off the program with Brad Dauberman from York County, and I'm going to turn the program over to you, Brad. So you're now the host, and you can share your screen and make it happen.
All right. All right. Can everybody see that?
You are good to go, Brad.
Okay. I'm Brad Dauberman from Shrewsbury in York County. Been a fire chief for 1 year and 23 days. So last year, my predecessor, in 2017, 2018, got the tax credit program started. And then last year we took that and bumped it up to include the real estate, 100% real estate and earned income tax credit. So just going to go through what we're doing here, who we're doing it with, and how we did it. Right now we're 4 for 4, and next week we'll be 5 for 5. Fingers crossed.
In the closet, sitting on the floor outside the.
So at our borough and township levels, we're receiving 100% real estate tax rebate and up to $500 earned income tax credit. Our members that live in the boroughs have a higher real estate tax because of the police force. In the township, they have, it's like $11 to $17. But we went to the township and we're like, look, people that live in the boroughs, they're getting all this. If it's, don't even buy a Five Guys burger, but it shows the gratitude by letting our members keep that. So they were all on board with it. So we're 100% across the board. We went to the school district, and it was a month after they approved their budget. So it was the worst possible timing, but they're giving us up to $500 earned income tax credit or $500 on the real estate tax. And that school district covers 4 fire departments and 2 ambulance agencies. And then beginning in January now, we start keeping points for 2023 for York County. It's a two-tiered system. Supporting members, non-riding members can earn up to, or not up to, but 25% real estate tax credit. And riding members, people that ride the trucks out the door, can get either 25% or 50%. And we don't pay the earned income tax to the county, so that's why that's not included. Who benefits from the tax credits? The responders. We've seen big time increase in participation over the last year. In 2021, we had about 11 people qualify for the program. I just finished up and submitted all of our tax credit programs on Friday, and it was 19. So we definitely saw an increase in motivation. We've been promoting it to draw new applicants. Our application committee is getting tired and they're getting a lot of work. The residents benefit. They're going to have a more active fire department, people hanging out at the station more, doing more, faster response times. The municipalities, the cost of the tax credits, as we all know, is going to be far less than paid crews. Paid crews would likely come from the tax base and resulting in tax increases. And the municipalities are politicians. They want to show active support for the volunteer fire service. Everybody loves firemen, so this gives them an opportunity to show it.
This room was being used, and they said no.
Who can offer the tax credits? As
Dave,
Jerry
I can
said,
go
the
somewhere
boroughs,
else.
townships, school districts, and counties. Each taxing authority sets the criteria to be met. For this to be productive, the taxing authority should meet with the fire department or EMS agency. If they just set it on their own, it's probably going to be out in left field and not targeted to what you need. What we've found is you don't want it to be too easy and you don't want it to be too hard. The goal is for it to be achievable. What I'm looking at is we're probably looking at about a 40 to 50% rate of people that achieve it out of our running members. When you meet with the municipality, make sure you account for all the duties that your responders and supporting members provide. And
sorry about that.
I can't see my screen. So the volunteers that meet the criteria have to live in the municipality. And this is one I'm fighting here on my end. Don't be an island. When you talk to the municipalities, push them to include all residents who volunteer. Even if you have residents that volunteer at a neighboring department, you want them included because your current members, future members may live in a neighboring municipality. You're working towards reciprocity so that if you have young guys now, they buy a house in the next town over and they still want to run with you, you want them to be eligible. The goal is to make the volunteer service stronger across the board. Those neighboring departments, if they have members that live in your town, they're going to be responding into your town. We got to put an end to the individual kingdom mentality. So on our end here, we have a neighboring township that only included one fire department. So I called them, talked to them. We're like, no, we only want people that live in our township and volunteer in our township. So after I showed him how many times we responded to his township, they're rewriting it and they're going to vote on that next week. But the rest of the municipalities down in the southern end all have that open-ended listing, either all the mutual aid companies or it just says any fire company. So it's going to help all the volunteers no matter where they choose to volunteer. So what we have done, when you go talk to these municipalities, the first thing you have to do is you have to believe that they want to help. Everyone told me the school district would never participate, and they passed it with unanimous vote. Everyone said the county would not help. They also passed with unanimous vote. The school and counties, unlike the boroughs and townships and cities, they don't have an obligation to provide fire protection. So why did they do it? It's a question I don't have an answer to. I've asked them. Some of them said because they run on supporting public safety. Others because it's the community they live in, they want to help. But in the end, I think they realize that if these small towns have to start paying millions for salaries, that's going to come right out of the tax base that in the future they're going to be taxing also. And this is a much cheaper option. So if you haven't talked to your municipalities yet, I labeled this setting the stage. Like, set the stage before you just go ask them to enact a tax credit program. Keep the municipalities up to date on what you're doing. Send them an email monthly with your calls, fundraising activities, purchasing vehicles, what your guys are doing. Send them a monthly run report because they do read them. Go to their meetings, let them see your face. Don't just show up at the first meeting and ask for free money because they're probably going to say no. Explain to them Act 91 of 2020, and page 23 is what you're looking for. Make sure they have the newest version. I dealt with a couple of cases where dealt with 5 solicitors so far for the different towns, townships, the county. Some of them were looking at Act 172 of 2016. If they Google Pennsylvania volunteer tax credit, the older one is going to come up. So make sure they're looking at the newest one, because the town council, township, they're going to listen to what the solicitor is telling them. So you have to make sure he's reading the right version. Explain to them that you need help recruiting new members. Tell them call volumes are going up, training requirements are going up, and you're working on keeping people from getting burned out. So this is pretty much the step-by-step plan I've taken. Begin with an email outlining how they can help. I sent it like a week before their meeting. Explain Act 91, what the credits are, share with them attach that to the email. Explain the decline in volunteerism across the state. I think over the last 40 years, we're at like 91%. Tell them, like, look, it's not just a problem in your town. It's a problem across the state and across the country. And then let them know you're going to come to the meeting and you want to talk about it. Go to the meeting, speak at public comment. Public comment time is usually 3 or 5 minutes. So get in the bullet points, but the email can be much longer and they will read that. And follow up with an email the following week, just thanking them for listening to you, and go back to the next meeting. This is one of the things I've talked to some of the board members after the fact at the school, and what they wanted to see was engagement. So if you just show up once, ask for it, and don't come back, it's just going to get shuffled to the dustbin. Show them you're engaged. They want to have the backing and the conviction that, yeah, this is a good thing. And if you don't have the time to not show up, then they're probably not going to put much stock in it. And then with most of them, this is something probably a lot of people don't do, is I tell them how many calls we failed last year. Tell them how many times the siren blows and no fire trucks respond. Nobody wants to talk about it. Yeah, it's embarrassing, but hey, some days we'll have 15, 20 guys. Some days we won't. And it's just based on people's schedules, vacation, life. It's the volunteer fire department. So let them know, this is a real problem and struggle, so that when they hear the siren blow, they start thinking, oh, are they going to get out this time? So if you hide those types of problems, they're not going to think there's a problem. And if they don't think there's a problem, then they're not going to see themselves as the solution. That was pretty much my step-by-step. I guess we'll do questions at the end.
Thank you very much, Brad. I got the host back, so we're good to go. So Chris, you good to go? I'm going to give you the host right now. All right, hold on. There you go, Chris. Let me hold on one second. I want to bring some people in on the waiting room before I give you the floor, Chris. Stand by 1 second. Okay. All right, Chris, you should have the host, so you should be ready to go.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yep, good to go, Chris.
All right, great. First of all, Jerry, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I want to tell you a little bit about the Exeter Township Volunteer Fire Department's program. A lot of what you heard, Brad did a great job explaining everything. A lot of the stuff that we did is very similar to what Shrewsbury did, which is good to hear and good to see. You know, one of the things that we did that's a little bit different is, you know, we originally instituted the municipal tax credit back in 2018. So right now, every eligible volunteer member will get a 50% municipal tax credit from their municipal tax bill. They also get the earned income tax up to $500, which is very similar to the Shrewsbury program. We're working to get to the 100% rebate on the municipal tax credit, which is something new that they implemented in the act that Brad mentioned. This past year in 2022, we also went to our school district, and I agree with Brad. We thought, you know, everyone thought we had no shot at getting that tax credit because realistically, they're not obligated to give us fire protection or money towards that fire protection. So what we did was, again, we were very persistent, went to pretty much every meeting that they, you know, had and pitched this program. So what they settled at was a $600 per eligible member tax credit, which we were happy with, but it wasn't exactly what we wanted. You know, we originally went in there and asked for a 50% school tax credit, and it's something that we're going to be revisiting with them, you know, over the next couple of years. Some of the eligibility requirements that we have, an Exeter Township Volunteer Fire Department member must live in the first two area. You know, Brad mentioned initially that, you know, you do have to live in that first two area, but they're looking at, you know, obviously having it for members that live outside of their first two area. But to do that, the neighboring municipalities would have to enact these tax credits. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing these presentations. You must own a property in Exeter or St. Lawrence in order to get the tax credit for the municipal side and the school tax credit. If you don't own property, you would still be eligible for the EIT credit or the earned income tax credit. For our department, you need to be a member for at least 1 year. You need to be a member in good standing. And again, it was mentioned that you want to make the criteria stringent enough that people are active, but you don't want to make it too unachievable that they're like, there's no way I'm going to reach this. So we implemented a bunch of different programs where they can hit their eligibility. We're fortunate enough that we have a 24-hour staffing program in our station where crew members do staffing shifts. So they're required to do a certain number of staffing shifts or log a certain number of hours per year to achieve the tax credits. We've also added in there some call response criteria, you know, to try to obviously keep them active and on the street. We've seen great success with our program. In 2021, we had 22 members that were eligible. And in 2022, we raised that up to 26. One of the big things that you need to do when presenting the programs to the municipalities or the school board members is to make sure you come up with some type of estimated annual cost for the tax credits. You know, this is very important. They obviously want to know the dollars and cents that go behind it. So we estimate that our tax credit program will run between $15,000 and $20,000 per year. It obviously can fluctuate. If we were to get more members, that's the goal. We want to get as many members eligible as possible so that the municipalities understand that it could be higher. Some years it could be lower, but our goal is to get as many people eligible as possible. A few things that you need to get from the members. We actually developed a local tax credit application that the township and municipalities have approved. We need to get a copy of their paid real estate tax bill, a copy of their W-2s, and a community service log if that's needed. Now, obviously, some of this stuff is very sensitive information. People may not want other people to know what they make in a year or what they pay in real estate taxes, but we ask them to put these in a sealed envelope that we'll pass on to the township. And if they don't hand those in, they can't get the tax credit. So a lot of people will comply with that once they understand that it is needed to get the money back. Some of the benefits and goals of our program, obviously the benefits are to increase the recruitment for our department and also increase the retention for the existing volunteers. I'm sure every department on this call has had issues of retention and recruitment, and this is a program that will help both of those areas. Also attract prospective members to live within our township. If they're looking for a house and one municipality may not have the tax credit, but our municipality does, it may sway them to come to this area and volunteer with our department. Some goals of the tax credit program on our end. We've been pretty strong with advertising this on social media and newsletters and different locations throughout the area. The goal is to solicit new members. And right now, since our program was implemented with the school district, we've added 5 new members over the last year, which is pretty exciting. Some of them were already interior members, and some are going through the program now. So that's pretty exciting on our end. And then some keys to success. Obviously, as Brad mentioned at the beginning, make sure you have a very strong relationship with your municipal officials. Go to meetings, be persistent, make sure they understand the programs. Know the eligible tax credit programs so you can speak intelligently about them. Make sure that you're talking about the right ones and you know what you want to ask for. Another big thing is make sure that you know the municipal budgets and finances. In these times, most people are strapped for budgets and everything else. Know what buttons you can push to try to get some money from them. Make sure you know that they have a $5 million budget or a $50 million budget. Because obviously a tax credit program that might cost $20,000 a year is significantly more on a $2 million budget than it would be on a $20 million budget. And again, develop a cost analysis. Just an estimate, give them something to work with, and then create a presentation with the cost analysis, the goals, and the benefits. Make sure that, the presentation is something that that's tangible, that they can see and touch, and make sure that they have it in front of them. That's all good ways to make sure that they understand the programs and also to keep it in front of them to make sure that it's first and foremost on their minds. And again, I'm Deputy Chief Chris Jordan. I'm with the Exeter Township Fire Department, and I'm sure Jerry will pass along our contact information. If anyone has specific questions, obviously we're here for that today, and I'm more than welcome to field any questions later on. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you, Chris. Go ahead and we're going to go with Jerry Brant and then Nate Silcox. So Jerry, do you want to talk a little bit about your school district tax credit? And then Nate's going to talk about the Cumberland County tax credit. So go ahead, Jerry.
Sure. Thanks, Jerry. For those of you who might not be familiar with the area, I run with the Patton Fire Company in Cambria County. Our department covers 98.9 square miles. About 7,500 people live full-time in those 98 square miles. And our school district is the Cambria Heights School District. Like both Brad and Chris had talked about, we started off, first of all, there are 4 fire departments within the school district. The Asheville Fire Department, Carrolltown, Hastings, and the Patton Fire Company. And we started off by first having a meeting of our chiefs to make sure that we were all on the same page in approaching the school board for this type of a tax credit. And what we did is we went and met with the finance committee of the school district for a couple of reasons. The committee meetings are not generally attended by the public. The people on the school district committee, the finance committee, you're able to have a lot more back and forth with them. They'll open up a lot easier than they will if you're just one of the public speakers at a school board meeting. And we were able to sit down, make our presentation to them. They then went back to their solicitor to find out, of course, if this was legal and the proper steps to take. We went back to their next committee meeting and started to talk about an amount. And they were happy to do a $200 annual tax refund, either on real estate taxes or on the school district earned income tax. And the reason that we approached them to do both was that we have, firefighters who don't own property, but they certainly pay school district wage taxes. And so we wanted them included as part of the benefit. We were able to work on, they actually asked us to come back with criteria, and the committee of the 4 chiefs developed the criteria that in order to be eligible for the $200 annual tax credit, they would have to be an active member. And an active member would consist of anyone who met any two of the following 5 criteria: answer at least 20 alarms per calendar year, complete 16 hours or more of certified training per calendar year, 12 hours of fundraising, 12 hours of record keeping, or 12 hours of station property maintenance. So basically, we tried to cover all the different age groups. We tried to cover anyone to get them under the blanket of the tax credit. The firefighter must be a member of his or her respective department for at least 1 year prior to applying for the refund. By January 31st of each year, the fire chief of each of the 4 departments must submit a list of the active members of his or her department for the previous year to the Cambria Heights Business Manager's office. To receive the tax credit refund, the individual firefighter must provide the business manager with a copy of either their W-2 for the previous year or a copy of their paid real estate taxes for the previous year, whichever document is relative to their claim. The individual firefighter must submit this request prior to April 1st of each year to be reimbursed. Documentation received after that date will not be processed. The business manager will verify whether the firefighter making the request is in fact listed on that year's active list and has submitted the proper paperwork. If the firefighter meets the applicable criteria, the Cambria Heights School District will issue a tax refund check prior to June 1st of that year. We were able to get that criteria passed by the Finance Committee. They then forwarded it on to the school board. A public hearing was held. There were no negative comments at that public hearing. And like the others that spoke before me, the school district board passed it unanimously. 2020 was the year that it was passed. I have been told, whether or not this is true, that we were the first school district in the state of Pennsylvania to do so. I can tell you that in the year 2021, which would have been the first year that anyone could submit, 45 people submitted for the tax credit. It cost the school district only about $9,000. 1 mil of taxes in our school district is roughly $82,000. So it was a small amount in relationship to the overall millage. For 2021, my own department was able to recruit 7 new members. Whether they came because of the tax credit, whether they came for other reasons, I don't know. But it was certainly, we don't see that kind of a number in a normal year. If anybody has any questions when we get to that part of it, please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Jerry. And Nate, whenever you're ready, why don't you jump on and talk about Cumberland County?
All right, thank you, Jerry. Particularly on this discussion on recruitment and retention of firefighters, namely through the state, county, and municipal tax credits for our first responders. I serve at both the state and local level, and so I'm going to cover both those areas. We'll get into the Cumberland County tax credit as well in there. But in both of my roles, I've done my utmost to keep what Benjamin Franklin started in Philadelphia in 1736, and that is the continuation of the volunteer fire service, ironically named Union Fire Company. That's no disrespect to our good friends in the career firefighter service, but I think we're all in here to try to keep this thing going as long as we can. Now, I've served as the executive director of the Pennsylvania Senate Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee since 2015 under 4 different chairmen. And prior to that, during the 2007-08 legislative session, I was the executive director of the Senate Local Government Committee. It was there that the SR 60 report was being implemented, and I was involved with the passage of the law requiring third-class cities to provide for fire and EMS services. And while a number of the 23 SR 60 recommendations were put into law, when I became the executive director of the Senate Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee, we went to work on unfinished business from the SR 60 report, starting with the legislation authorizing municipalities to enact the tax credits for first responders. So we were successful with the passage of House Bill 1683, which we're talking about tonight, Act 172 of 2016, authorized municipalities to enact via ordinance a tax credit against an active volunteer's earned income tax or property tax. It limited the tax credits not more than 20% of the tax liability of the volunteer, the active volunteer. It required a notarized list of eligible volunteers to be submitted to the governing body no later than 45 days before tax notices are to be distributed by the fire chief or EMS supervisor or chief. And it also required the notification to the state fire commissioner's office. And as I mentioned earlier, I also serve as a member of the Hampden Township Board of Commissioners in Cumberland County. We have a population of 33,000 now. And one of my assignments is as a fire commissioner for us. And I'd be remiss if I didn't help pass this at the state level, if I didn't work on it at the local level. So it's probably a little bit easier for us in Hampden Township to get this done. So there was not quite the lobbying effort in other municipalities and counties and school districts. But I'm pleased that we did follow suit in 2017. We established a $250 earned income tax credit. This past year, 31 volunteer with our fire companies received it. And it is important to note, as of right now, I believe we have 8 municipalities in our Cumberland County that have instituted tax credit. So back to the state level in 2018, the SR 6 Commission put forth 27 recommendations to improve our fire and EMS system. And recommendation number 1 specifically called for the inclusion of school districts and county taxes, tax credits. In 2020, at the state level, we put together a package of 13 separate measures into House Bill 1673, and that became Act 91 of 2020. And amongst those provisions, the Act permitted counties, school districts, or a consortium of municipalities, councils of governments to establish property tax credits for first responders. It also required the state fire commissioner to establish guidelines and issue an annual report on the program. So then getting back into the local level, this past July, Cumberland County became the first county in the Commonwealth to offer a $250 property tax credit for our volunteer fire and EMS personnel in the county. To qualify for the tax credit, certified active volunteers must be in good standing with their fire and EMS organizations requirements for at least 6 months between January 1st and November 30th of the same year. Applications for the tax credit can be submitted annually. It took a concerted effort, not just amongst our 5-member Township Board of Commissioners, but also with our county fire chiefs. We tuned into the idea and to also ask for our commissioners to ultimately consider it. We have 3 county commissioners. Our 5-member board was active in not just writing to them, but also communicating them on every stop, and they were receptive. And it took a relatively short period of time to get them to enact it. We're really pleased on that front. And this was the first year it was in place. So it is my hope that additional municipalities will come together, push for the counties to do the same. It's great to hear about York and a couple of these others that are working towards that, and particularly at the school district level, where we're trying for my local Cumberland Valley School District to back it. Now, back at the state level, this past fall, we passed House Bill 397. That's now Act 104 of 2022. and that permits tax credits to be adopted by resolution, not just by ordinance. And just today, I received a copy of the State Fire Commissioner's report on the tax credit. Not only identify 12 of the municipalities statewide that have instituted tax credit, but hopefully this will be a living document to continue to add all those, not just stated here tonight, but as many as we can get on that list so everybody knows exactly where these are at, the dollar amounts, and what they include. Now, the big question here for me is really whether we can get a state tax credit reinstituted. As many of you are aware, a $100 tax credit was implemented as a result of the SR 60 report, but it was ended a short while later due to the issue with joint reporting and not being worth it for a $100 tax credit. Senator Michelle Brooks has sponsored Senate Bill 148, which would offer new firefighters a $500 tax credit and firefighters with 6 years of experience a $1,000 tax credit. That's in the Senate Finance Committee, so it's time to start speaking with your local state legislators, local state senators here in support of that legislation, if that's a priority to you. Hopefully this was helpful, but a lot of the same that happened here in Hampden Township, happened, what was said earlier here by the three other gentlemen. It's just, really a concerted effort, working together and continue, being persistent. And, now that we got the county, we're off to the school district level in my municipality, and I'm hopeful of getting there sooner rather than later. So again, thank you very much, Jerry. Appreciate your ongoing efforts to educate everybody and work together. And one last thing is I'll say, fly, Eagles, fly. So thank you.
Thanks, Nate. I just wanted to direct everybody, the Cumberland County Tax Credit Program. If you want to Google the Cumberland County website, they have my little dog just started barking, but they have a copy of the ordinance. Those of you that are interested in the ordinance, you go to the Cumberland County the Cumberland County website. And additionally, the Office of the State Fire Commissioner, Tracy, who is the volunteer or the Recruitment and Retention Program Manager, put a link in the chat on information on the Office of the State Fire Commissioner Volunteer Tax Credit Incentive Program. So you could take a look on that, and there's some details on the tax incentive program and the things that you can do with that. So with that, I don't want to keep droning on here, and I wanted to open up for questions. And for some reason, I cannot see anybody because I was going to have everybody raise their hand. But if someone's interested in asking the question, and then I will then direct it to the appropriate panel member. So envision this like a panel discussion if you would attend a conference or something like that, and I'll direct that to that. Does anybody want to kick it off?
Jerry?
Go ahead.
Jerry, quick question. I guess Chris was the one that mentioned it regarding a W-2. I understand the tax bill, to show you pay tax. The W-2 kind of lost me on that. What's the reasoning behind it?
So the W-2 was for the EIT tax credit. I'm not sure if the others require it, but I know our township, they want to see the EIT that was paid via the W-2.
Okay.
There may be another way to do it if the others know that way, or maybe from a tax return, but they ask for the W-2.
And Chris, do you also, I know you have residents, the firemen who live there. Do you also include businesses at all or not? Because that was an interesting take from someone else that commented, either a tax bill from their businesses in the township or they live in the township.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Say that one more. Ask me one more time.
You referenced the tax bill, and they have to come in with the tax bill that they live there. Okay. Is also an option if they have their business there but don't quote unquote live there.
We have not offered that to the businesses. I believe it has to be owned by the individual, and it has to be their primary residence.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. Others who have questions, just go ahead and start off.
Hi, this is Gary Buxom. I'm actually the superintendent with the Port Allegheny School District up in McKean County. Thanks for hosting this meeting. I have a question for we were familiar with the Cambria Heights program in Cambria County. At this point, we've had this discussion preliminarily with our board. We formed a committee and are going to meet with our local volunteer groups in February. My question is, how long did it take you to have those conversations, whether it's via committee or with your local fire departments, to set the criteria and the determination? Was this a 6-week process, 8-week process? I'm just kind of curious as far as how long did it take to come to fruition?
Maybe Jerry goes first and then Brad, maybe.
Okay. It was about 6 months from the time that the 4 departments first sat down until we had the public hearing and the school district passed the tax credit program.
Yeah, ours was in York County. It was about 5 months. They set us up to talk with the treasurer, the school treasurer, and the decision was made since 3 of the 4 fire departments used basically the same point system criteria for the boroughs and townships. The school district was just going to copy that verbatim. And then 2 months for advertising, and then a public hearing, and then they voted on it.
And Jerry, that was similar for us as well. Basically, with the county, they utilized Hampden Township's tax credit program, basically emulated that, and then it was relatively in short order by the time that Cumberland County got it done based off that. So it certainly helps to have one of your municipalities already go through the process and be able to utilize that. But make sure it works for you as if with the school district or the county first.
Thank you, Dave. Others that have questions, go ahead and jump in here.
Yeah, I'll ask. It's kind of on the school district level again. Counting at my best guess, I think our school district has 9 different fire departments that cover its first due. A neighboring school district has 2, for example. So any, I guess, insight of how do you, I think the example was referenced by the Cambria County fellow was 4 departments, which is kind of somewhat in the middle, but where would you start with a school district that has 9 fire departments covering its area versus one that has 4, one that has 2? It's obviously a huge difference and a lot more people coming to the table.
Brad, do you want to start with that one?
9's a lot. I at least have one person take the lead on it. And then even if it's a moderate, low amount of tax credit you can get the program established. And then play the long game. The next couple of years, the school can, as the budget allows, increase that. But I think the toughest part is getting the program established and approved, and then the hard work's done.
Anyone else on the panel could help answer that question?
Yeah. Do any of the municipalities in your district, and then the 9 municipalities there, do they have a tax credit already?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, certainly that's, I would start there. If you can work on getting one to adopt it and then go from there in terms of asking the school district, but it shows the municipalities have skin in the game. And again, that was what was just mentioned. It doesn't have to be $250. Look, it can be $100 or just get it in there at $50 or something. And it all adds up. And, between what we have in Hampden Township at $250 and the county, that's earned income at the county at $250 with property tax. And we just were involved with our Council of Government on a federal SAFER grant that's going to have a stipend in there as well. It all adds up at that point. But, certainly if the school district and the county, don't necessarily have to be at that same level as a municipality, but it certainly helps to have the municipalities have skin in the game early on. So if you can, I would recommend that you guys, again, you get your chiefs together from those 9 municipalities, make sure that you guys are on the same page, talk about which municipalities within those 9 that are willing to take that step, focus on that first, and then I'd focus on the school district after that.
Okay.
Yeah, the most important thing is for the 9 departments to sit down and discuss this among themselves and to come to a consensus on, what they want the criteria to be. Because the last thing that you need to do is go into a school board meeting or a committee of the school board, and one department says, well, no, we want $200. One says, oh, we want $500. You're not going to get anywhere. So you got to have a consensus among yourselves. Start with a meeting of the 9, and then once you have that consensus, move forward to the school.
And one other point there is to look at some of these other programs. Know how many firefighters or if you're talking about fire and EMS at that point, how many you're talking about, so that the school district can make a good calculation on how much it's going to cost them. So make sure you have that number early on.
Excellent advice. Others that have a question, go ahead and jump on. Randy Gockley has his hand up. Lancaster County.
Thank you, Jerry. Speaking from a county perspective, I'm sure when it gets into the school district and to the municipalities, you need to talk to them at the local level. But in your experience, to try to get a county-wide program, do you see where it would be beneficial for the county fire chiefs or the county firemen's association to play a part in this, or let it up to the local regional fire companies to follow through as they deem appropriate? Or county associations, do they have a place in this?
I'm going to kick it. I just wanted to add before I go is Dauphin County just implemented this last week. So Brad, maybe you could talk about your county's experience with the county.
So I started off with an email to the commissioners. Basically, it was a duplicate email of what I sent to the school district. And we started that dialogue, and it was going well, but then it went sideways. And I think I got a stomach ulcer out of it. I'm like, we need to include a lot more fire chiefs in it than just Brad. Because they wanted to duplicate Shrewsbury's system for the whole county. I'm like, that will not work. There's larger departments, smaller departments. The point system we have is not going to work for this whole county. So we got more chiefs involved and the president of the Chiefs Association. And after a couple of weeks, we came to a really good compromise and consensus. In fact, what the county came back with, like, point system, the chiefs all thought was way too easy. So we bumped that up a little bit, and then we're able to, without going into the details, include everybody that needed to be included. And I think everybody came away happy. And the York County, just like our school district, was not budgeted for. So this was money that they pulled from the margins and are able to provide. So in the future, we're hoping it'll be more, but it's a pretty good starting point. And I think everybody came away from the table pretty happy with that.
Randy, I do think it would be definitely a good thing to get an endorsement from the Fire Chiefs Association and an endorsement from the Firefighters Association, and jointly have an endorsement of that, and bring together a group of from each organization in a planning effort and starting to communicate that. Pretty much, I think would be very well. Others that have questions?
Jerry, it's Chris.
Go ahead.
Just real quick on the county side, for Berks County, I did the same as Brad. I emailed the county commissioners probably a few months ago in regards to implementing it for Berks County. And they're basically requiring us to get the Berks County Fire Service Working Group to present it to the county. So to answer the initial question, from our perspective in Berks, they don't want to hear from the individual chiefs. They want it from that group that supposedly represents all of us. So we're working on that this week, and hopefully we'll have a presentation to them, in the coming weeks.
Great advice. Other questions that somebody may have?
I have a question. I think it was Nate said there's a Senate bill going through or being discussed.
Correct. There is a Senate bill that has been introduced. Senator Michelle Brooks is the prime sponsor of it. It is Senate Bill 148, and that's been introduced. That's been referred to the Senate Finance Committee. So
Okay.
it's just early in the session. It hasn't been moved yet. Jerry, do you recollect? I think it came out of the committee, or at least the prior session's version came out. But it's going to take a concerted effort, and whether it ends up at the $500, like I said, it's bifurcated $500 for a firefighter, or 6 years. If you have 6 years experience, you get $1,000 tax credit based on that legislation. But again, the initial one number of years ago was a $100 tax credit, and it was really messy in terms of, if you were trying to file jointly for a $100 tax credit, it just wasn't worth it. Unfortunately, it went away rather than revising it to make it worthwhile. But hopefully, we can make this thing right and find the right number to settle on, whether it's that 500,000 or some other number.
Yeah, and that's great. And I all of you, we're going to start to track that bill. And I know I've talked to Senator Brooks's staff that would probably be something the PFESI would support. But, the concept is, again, if it's in the finance committee and your senator's on the finance committee, you need to give them a call and talk about it. Okay. And those type of things. So I do think that is naturally the next step, a statewide tax credit. I would love to see that again, but again, as Nate said, that's a lot larger, a lot more people involved. I do also see Nate did put a copy of our Hampden Township ordinance for our volunteer tax credit, and you can click on that in the chat and download that ordinance also if you wanted a copy of that. Other questions as we're approaching the 8 o'clock hour here pretty quickly. Other questions before we keep moving on? And
all right, I'll come in again. I realize there's 50 something people, but I'll break the silence. A couple questions. This is more or less for everybody in terms of who from your department qualifies. I know some that mentioned this seemed like it was more for responders, kind of wondering what your bench line is for that, whether it's percentage of calls per month. I know there's another gentleman that mentioned they had different things. So it was a certain number of calls, a certain number of training, a certain number of fundraisers, for example. How do you create those benchmarks? Who verifies them? How did your respective municipalities feel about those benchmarks?
Well, let's go with Chris first, then Brad, and then Jerry.
Okay, from our perspective, the local municipalities and the school district allowed us to come up with the criteria on our own. And we're very fortunate. I know you brought up about 9 fire departments in one school district. We are the only fire department that covers our school district. So it's kind of an easier path. So we came up with our own criteria and they accepted that. As far as verifying it, I'm in charge of verifying it, and it just gets signed off on by the fire chief. And we allow all types of individuals to qualify. It could be somebody that's a responder. It could be somebody that helps with our finances. It could be somebody that helps with fundraising. We have all different ways that people can qualify on our end.
At Shrewsbury, we have a point-based system. It's 2 categories. The second category is fundraising and public education and fire prevention. So they earn 4 points per hour. And the first category is all our operational stuff: training, meetings, responding to calls, maintenance, work details, and different number of points are allocated there. They have to earn a total of 200 points, and 100 of those 200 must come from the fundraising, public education, fire prevention side. So if we have people that don't run calls but are helping out with all that, they can add up to 200. without doing vehicle maintenance and running calls. Once they get over 200, it doesn't matter. 200 is a benchmark. You either get it or you don't. And we have it's like about a $600 time clock in the station. We have 2 of them that you can enter job codes. So when people come in the station, they say, hey, I'm here for training, or I'm here for meetings or vehicle maintenance. And then we can pull reports on that. And it just makes it a whole lot easier at the end of the month, end of the year.
Our what we use is you have to have any 2 of the following 5 criteria: answer at least 20 alarms per calendar year, complete 16 hours of certified training, 12 hours of fundraising, 12 hours of record keeping, or 12 hours of station property maintenance. It is the duty and responsibility of the let's say the fundraising. If someone's if we're having a gun raffle or we're having a summer festival or whatever, the chairperson of that event is responsible to turn the hours over to the chief. At the end of the year, the chief compiles a list and posts it at the station and says, these are the people that are eligible for this year's tax credit. If you feel your name has been left out, please contact me within the next couple of weeks, because by such and such a date, I'm turning it into the school district. And by the end of the month, by January 31st, the chief has to turn that information in.
Makes total sense.
Very good. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank
One thing that's good about Cumberland counties is they leave it up to each individual fire chief. The fire chief has to certify the list at the end of the year. Each individual firefighter, if you want to claim the Cumberland County tax credit, you have to fill out a form, attach your proof of paying the taxes, and mail it in yourself to the county, okay? And then the fire chief has a list, and it has to be notarized, and that's sent to the county, and that's the check and balance right there. But Cumberland County doesn't have all this points and all that. It's just like many of you said, it's not, we can't micromanage that from a county level and do that. So other questions that somebody might have?
What's that?
Okay. With that in mind, no questions, correct? I'll give you one more chance to ask any questions because we're coming up on 8 o'clock.
Not to want to hold everybody up.
Go ahead.
Fire company is largely based on firefighters and volunteers coming in to help with fundraisers. In all these situations, if we do a percentage base, is it 50% per person or 50% per household?
I'm going to leave that for Brad or Chris to answer, maybe.
From my understanding on the real estate taxes, it's 50% per household. On the EIT, it would be 50% per person. That's my understanding. Unless, I don't know, Brad, is that the way you understand it?
So on our local ones, it's 100% to 100%. For the county, I don't know, because I don't have anybody in that situation that made me think to ask that.
Yeah, I understand your question, because both people in my household also participate. So I understand the question. Like, if there's two in a household, is it different than just one person per household? If that makes sense.
I think on the real estate, it has to be just on the total real estate bill. And then on the EIT, it would be individual.
Okay, makes sense.
I believe Chris is correct on that. And I do encourage you to go to the Cumberland County site to look at that. There was something in regards to, I can't remember off the top of my head, I wish I was a little more on that, about a family member in the same household. The family member is the volunteer and the other person in the house owns the house, okay, and they have to be either married or something like that. I don't know, but please look on the website, because that does define that kind of thing.
So in that case, I think their name has to be on the tax bill. But if it's a married couple and both names are on the tax bill, I don't know if you can add 50 and 50 or if it's just 50.
Any other questions? All right. So with that, let me see if Tracy's on here still. Tracy, are you still on? Are you able to just do a quick introduction about what your requirements are for the fire commissioner's office? Are you still there? Yes, you're on.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Tracy Young Broomgard, administrator for the Recruitment and Retention Program, the Office of State Fire Commissioner. So the link I did put up is all the information in regards to the tax credit programs and the link to the reporting form. So anybody whose county, school district, or municipality are participating in this, they are required under legislation to report. So please make sure you direct them to that link. We do have, I was just checking the database. So we do have 13 municipalities participating in that. And I was just looking to see, I think one school district has reported out of all of those. So, I mean, other than that, I mean, everybody's done a great job of covering the information, Brad and Chris, and I've interacted with both of those individuals. So nice job on that, and Nate as well. So unless there's questions for me, just if they need anything for recruitment and retention, please don't be afraid to reach out.
Yes, and that's the important thing that I wanted to say about that is that reporting requirement is really important because we try to at our level, we try to track things. You know, for example, I was able to get some data from municipalities that have implemented their EMS tax, and you know, out of all the municipalities, the number that I got was like 154. But I'm struggling to find out how many municipalities have a fire tax. So it's kind of hard to get data occasionally at the state level, but that's okay. I really appreciate all the discussions. You know, 50 people it was up to like 60, 66, 67, I think total. It's down about 48 now. So I'm really proud of our panelists for helping Pennsylvania Fire and Emergency Services Institute out. Again, we are a statewide advocacy and education organization. We are a nonprofit that survives on donations. I will be sending out all of the information, and I'm going to send out a link too if you consider donating to our organization to keep us moving forward. So I want to thank everybody and enjoy your evening. Thank you, panel. Good night.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry.